Welcome to our meetup, Data Visualization Zurich, number 18. Today we are here with Dario Rodighiero, who will talk about network visualizations. Thank you very much for being here. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. And thank you very much for being so many of you tonight. It's great. First, before jumping into our topic, a few things about our meetup. So my name is Luc Guillemot. I'm an interaction engineer at Interactive Things here in Zurich. And I co-organize this meetup with Benjamin Wiederkehr, who is managing director at Interactive Things and who is also with us tonight. And we organized these monthly events about data visualizations. And our motivation is to build a community around data visualization in Zurich to unite a diverse community of people with different backgrounds, but interested in data visualization. And we want this meetup to be a space for everyone to share and advance the knowledge of our local community, and maybe we can lead to collaboration. So we want to foster relationships across relationship between people, disciplines, and organizations. This is a few ways you can contact us, me and Benjamin. So the first point of contact is meetup.com/datavizzurich. And we are also on Twitter and Instagram at datavizzrh for both handles. And you can also reach us at by email using the email hello@interactivethings.com. So don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have something to say about the meetup, if you would like to be a speaker yourself, or if you would like to see a topic being tackled in our meetup. So really don't hesitate. We are also always looking for less heard voices, people that we maybe don't think of asking to speak. So really don't hesitate to reach out to us if you want to participate. For today, so we will have a presentation by Dario, who will talk for about 40 minutes, which will leave us about 20 minutes for questions and answers. But today it will actually be 19 minutes because we have a special announcement that we want to make, Benjamin and I. So stay tuned for the end of the meetup. So we aim to close the meetup around 6. So about today's presentation, so we have the great pleasure to have with us Dario, who will talk to us about network visualizations as a design attitude. Dario is a research scholar at Harvard University and a postdoc at the Médialab, which is a research unit dedicated to innovation in the arts and humanities. And he works at the intersection of design, science, and humanities. So we actually met Dario and I at EPFL in Lausanne, where we were students there together. So I'm really happy that you joined us tonight. It's great. And I'm also happy that we talk about network visualizations because we have a series of meetup about specific types of visualizations. We had one about flow maps, one about last time we talked about cartographic projections. So I'm happy that we continue this row of specific visualizations, talk about them, and especially because Dario, you have a very personal and very interesting take on how to visualize networks. So I'm really happy that you're with us. And with that, I will leave you the stage.
Thank you, Luca. Thank you, Benjamin, for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here and to have this very large audience. I prepared this presentation that I think you can like, especially the audience of today is very diverse. And in that sense, I think it's interesting to tell you that I have an hybrid education because I graduated in computer science and I have a master in psychology, in visual psychology, if you want, because I was interested in the way in which you can communicate with computational means. And after that, I started working as an interaction designer, as an interface designer. And at a certain point of my life, I started to work with data. So in a sense, I am now a scholar, but I'm also a data designer, a graphic designer. So my profile is very hybrid, and I like to work in research environment and also in academia. So my presentation is about networks, network visualizations, and the aesthetics of a network. I started with this title, which refers to design attitude. Basically, it's a quote from Laszlo Moholy-Nagy. So it's from the Bauhaus and the new Bauhaus. And basically, he has this concept of a design as an attitude of life. So it's not a profession, but it is really a way of seeing the life, your whole life. So in this moment, we are designing network, but somehow we are even designing the life of people. So I started with my presentation with Bruno Latour. I cited in the abstract of this presentation, and for me it represented in a big change in my career, because I left Milan, I left Italy for love. I moved to Paris, and I didn't meant to work in Paris because the city was so beautiful, but then I was in contact with this professor called Giorgio De Michelis from Milan, and he told me, you have to contact Tommaso Venturini, because Tommaso was my former PhD student, and he's working with Latour. You know, when you are at the university, you're studying Latour, especially in computer science. And so I contacted Tommaso. Tommaso invited me for lunch at the Metalab, which is this space, Medialab, sorry. And finally, they had the need, they forgot kind of a task of work. And in the afternoon, I was working with them. So I joined the Medialab, and it was a very good period because it was at the very beginning. And this is a photograph of the Medialab. It's not the Medialab of Cambridge I've seen later in time, because the one in Cambridge is really building. The Medialab at that time was kind of a hole in the ground in the center of Paris. And they created this high-tech office with automatic camera, automatic microphones, in which we were connected to the world. But basically, we had no windows. Now they have beautiful offices. And I had the opportunity to work with Bruno at this project, AIM, an inquiry into modes of existence. I was working as a graphic design, and basically it's the big book of Bruno Latour with the summary of his research, if you want, in these keys of modes of existence. But what was interesting in this book is that the paper book had no indexes or references. Everything was in the interface, and we put a lot of effort to create an advanced interface for this book. And it was a great opportunity because I was deepen in the thought of Bruno Latour. I had the pleasure to learn about this theory, the actor network theory, called even ANT, like it's the acronym. And this is very important because basically Latour was talking about networks before the invention of the networks as we know them. And everything was related to this book wrote by Thomas Hobbes in the 17th century called The Leviathan. And basically this book is about the structure of a society and legitimate the government. But what is interesting for me, at least, but for everybody, is the cover of the book. Indeed, you see this king representing the citizen. So you have this image that is a representation of the relational concept that is binding the king with all the citizens. And then from this absolutely abstract thought of network, we move to the actual network visualization we know. And this is an image by my colleague Martin Grandjean from the University of Lausanne. I think now he's based in Luxembourg. And it was created with Gephi. And you have to know that at the Médialab of Science Po, there was Mathieu Jacomy, that was one of the creator of Gephi. And so what happened in that period at the Médialab? That Gephi and its algorithm Force Atlas 2 was a kind of a materialization of the thought of Bruno Latour in terms of graphic design and computation. So we have these two approaches to the networks that, in my opinion, are merged through the design, because it is true that the Médialab was a mix of sociology, social science, and engineering. But it's even true that the part of design was well covered. I was there for a couple of years, but for example, Donato Ricci, who is the lead designer of the Médialab, is still there. And I had also the pleasure to work with Daniele Guido, that now is design lead at the University of Luxembourg. So yes, a lot of computational sociology, but even a bunch of design that for me was the very innovation introduced by Bruno Latour with this lab. Then I moved to Lausanne, is where I met Luc. And basically, I applied to this position in digital humanities. I was accepted, but I didn't know that my future advisor, Frederic Plan, was in contact with Bruno Latour. So this is a very nice picture we took at the Digital Humanities Conference in 2014. And for me, it's a kind of a representation of the passage of the two experiences, France and Switzerland. And as you see, we are there on a network I will describe later. So I talk a little bit of my PhD. My PhD and even my current studies as a postdoctoral student at Harvard University are about the mapping of scientific communities. So I started my PhD with an investigation, but of course, as I like a lot graphic design, I started with a visual investigation. So I started to investigate how individuals were showed in through data visualization, charts, and so on. And I will show a selection of these images that inspired me in my work. This is a map created by John Snow, an epidemiologist that lived in the 19th century in London. And basically, he created this map for the first time in the history to represent the death of a cholera in the Soho neighborhood of London. The goal was to find what was the source of the cholera epidemic. And so basically he went door to door, asking the number of that. Okay, and he was able to create this map, and this map was the tool that he used to find the pump that was serving polluted water, which is in this precise point. So data visualization is a tool to see things differently, but even can be even a proof you can bring with you when you want to share your idea, support your idea, present your projects. This is another visualization of individuals. We are in the 19th century, and we have this visualization created by an engineer and a manager called Daniel McCallum. We are in the United States, close to New York, and indeed this is a representation of train lines. And I think that this representation is beautiful because you have the shape of the tree that was very common in the Middle Ages, but at the same time you have this precision, and all the small circles you see are employees of the train lines. And it's tree geographical because the shape is a tree, but you have actually line of trains going up, and the people is associated to the place where they are working. So McCallum was using this as a tool to manage the employees and rebuild the organization of the train lines. And then when we talk about people, we have this image of organizational charts. And the first two on the left are from the 20s. So we are talking about the 1920s. And on the right, you have two organizational charts from a European Commission. And you see a great simplification. And basically, you don't have people anymore. You have just people with the role of management. So I found this very interesting because it was a kind of oversimplification compared to the previous visualization. So the shape of network, the shape of a network we have still now, it's from 1930s, and was a psychiatric that invented this, called Jacob Levi Moreno. And this is the first network visualization representing a friendship. And you see people like represented as nodes and connection of friendships with also directionality. But then we advance, let's say that we advance in terms of complexity, but not in terms of language. This is an artist I love, it's called Marco Lombardi, and you find his works even at the MoMA in New York. And he used the shape of network to represent investigation. For example, this investigation is about the connection between the former president Bill Clinton and the Lippo Group in a history of money laundering. I don't know exactly, but what is interesting is that this person, Lombardi, was using a network visualization to organize his information. And this became a sort of art. And for example, it's very nice to see here, you have a Bill Clinton and you have the zoom in this place. And then what happened when I was at the Médialab, that the complexity exploded. So we have this explosion of a complexity in this seminal work signed by Latour, Jensen, Venturini, Growin, and Boulier. And the idea, which is even behind the actor network, is that you have to represent the complexity of life, especially in terms of human and non-humans. And this is a map of science. It's an export from a web of science through the keyword self-organization. And here you can see keywords, authors, and references. But what happened? We have so much complexity that it's not even possible to follow the lines. Remember this because I will come to this in later. So a few projects. Again, the carpet I built for the Digital Humanities Conference was a brand image to represent the scientific community, the speakers of the community, but also collective representation. And it became a game to find yourself on the carpet. And that was completely messy. With my professor, Frederic Plan, we agreed, but so you are not able to see relationships that were based on keywords and co-authoring. But the arrangement of people was meaningful. And what was great in that moment and changed completely my relationship to my thesis, it was that it was impressive to represent the identity of a people. And so we had this kind of feedback from the attendees to the conference, and especially speakers were playing, looking for themselves in the data visualization. This is, I think, it's a kind of a design approach of network visualization in what it's called physicality. This is related to my PhD, which is a data visualization about a scientific community. And that was a way to present my work to the scientific community. And it was interesting because when you create this large visualization presenting the identity of a people, it's a way to engage people in a discussion. The visualization is good, is not good, why am I represented in this way? It's a kind of a reflection when you recognize yourself. And in a way, it's also a collective conversation, a collective recognition. Let's see that the viewers recognize themselves in the map, in the network. So this is just another, what I can say, it's another way in which you can see the interpretation of design for the network. And so the previous turpilan, the material of the carpet, was used to create bags, like Freitag, if you want, and they were fight to have this kind of bags. So in this moment, we realized that there is really a tight and intimate bound between your representation and yourself. And this is another project I did. I go very, very quickly on this, but basically we tested the same issue with a conference. And so people were recognizing in organization and not in the single identity of a people. And this is just a crazy situation in this time machine conference, with people taking selfie, taking photo and asking for portraits. So conclusion from this very first step. We have a few rules to display individuals. It's the network visualization is very interesting when you represent people, you represent individuals, identities. You can use the network visualization to give a sense of a community. So I'm part of that scientific community. What do you have to avoid? You have to avoid evaluation and comparison, because you can create a fight, because you have to give a sense of a community. You don't have to show how much publication the big boss has compared to the new students. So you have to develop a visualization in a way to avoid comparison. And the last one is to support integration, because this is very important, because you can use the network to create a new synergy between the people represented. So with this know-how, let's say, I moved to apply these rules to the EPFL. So here we are in Switzerland. Probably a lot of you know the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology based in Lausanne, also known as École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne. And you see the Rolex from the top, which is the library and the very central building of the university. So the idea was how we can represent the scientific community of EPFL through, of course, a network. And for that, I was relying to the previous experience, but I was even relying on this idea of Zoom. So I know that a lot of you are designers, so probably you know the movie Powers of 10 by Eames and Ray by Charles and Ray Eames from '77, which was a reprise from Boeke Keys from the Netherlands. And the idea, which was one of the big concepts of Bruno Latour, is to work on zooming. So from the Zoom, I created this network visualization, and the first thing you see labs in this moment. Red, for example, are labs related to architecture. But what was interesting was to apply the gravity force and avoid people far from the network, because I think that gravity is a way to represent the collective all together. And then we can zoom in, and by zooming you see new information. So it's a strange network, because to navigate it you have to zoom in. And you see, I told you previously, not comparison. And basically the size of the labs is always the same. In this way, you cannot compare different labs. And I applied the hexagonal grid. That was a kind of a compromise with the gravitational force, because you have to keep the distance between the nodes, and with the gravity everything is collapsed. But with an hexagonal force of repulsion, basically you have the optimization of the space, which is the hexagon. And then if you zoom, you can see the labs, you can see keywords between these hexagonal spaces, keywords that are in common. So I call this semantic background, because one interesting thing is that networks don't use the background of the space. So I use it just to represent the semantic background. But what is important is that you can do a qualitative comparison between the labs. Basically, you have these rings that represent advising, publication, and teaching. And according to the thickness, you can see if a lab is more involved into research or in education. This is the case of Alice, for example, which is very in education, and Coros is more balanced. But then you zoom again and you see that you have a kind of ego network. Ego network is a very nice way to present networks. Basically, you have satellites around one node, and these stay for links without the problem of overlapping lines. So basically here you can have all the connection with the name of the laboratory to which Coros is related. And I use even the satellites as navigation devices. So basically you can click on them and you can jump on the other node. And here, if you zoom inside, you realize that one lab is a network in turn. And this is interesting because we have a network of connection between labs, and then you have another network of collaboration within the very same lab. And here you have a pattern. Of course, for each lab you have different patterns, and of course a chord diagram is a different way to present networks. And finally, if you zoom again, you arrive to people, and you can see the name of people. You can have a quantitative score. So in this case, Jacques Lévy is the director of this lab. Boris Bod, he was at least the senior scientist in the lab, and Monique was an educator in the lab. What is interesting is that through these quantitative values, we can recognize the role of the individual inside of the lab. You cannot compare people of different laboratories, but you can, of course, compare people of the same laboratory for which the hierarchy is very clear. So if you want to explore, maybe we have for some extra minutes, you can check the data visualization, which was address is affinitymap.epfl.ch and ch, and this is the interface. But I just wanted to continue the inquiry in other example, because I fall in love with this concept of the grid, and I think that in this moment we miss still a way to organize spaces or nodes in network visualization. And one great example of this geometrical organization is represented by Harry Beck with this big improvement of the underground map. We are in the 30s, and on the left you see the old map from London, and you see the new one, which basically became the standard in this kind of maps. And then you have this very beautiful reference for the hexagonal pattern. So you have the honeycomb, which are the natural best way of using spaces. And in this diagram I designed for my thesis, I can show even you how one single node can be related to 24 different ones without any kind of overlapping. So in a sense, the hexagon is to improve the readability, but also to organize the lines of the network in a regular pattern. And of course, with the lines, so you can continue to talk, and you have many inspiration from the chart of the past. This in particular is a Portland charts. If you pay attention, you see the names of cities on the borders, in this case of Italy. This is Puglia. Here you have Venice, which is a kind of a center of the Mediterranean of that time. I think here we are in the 15th century. You have Sicily, Sardinia, Tunisia, and so on. And I think in the network, we miss the way in which we can move in the network. And this is exactly what the Portland chart does. Another thing I found very interesting about network visualization is the fact that you have an arrangement, and this makes sense even without the lines. I mean, as we have seen in that complex visualization of the Médialab with scholars and papers and keywords. Basically, the information is driven by the position of elements in the space. And this, for example, is produced by Paul Dietry Giesecke, and it's the first visualization that step just after the trees. So basically, Giesecke gets rid of the connection and concentrate himself just in the disposition. And here we are plants because Giesecke was a botanist working with Linnaeus. And this is a representation of plants, and on the borders you have very small text saying why two elements are close to each other. And I found it very interesting this. Indeed, the affinity map don't rely a lot on links. And we arrive in this other very recent representation without links, the UMAP. UMAP is the solution to plotting very big networks. And what you do, you remove all the lines, otherwise it's it's impossible to read visually at least something. You can compute, of course, but you cannot read or convey any message with just the drawing. So here we have computational methods based on machine learning that are able to arrange millions of nodes, and they are working without links. So the point is, we really need the links. This is one of my preferred question. And I found even this work of Pierre Bourdieu, who was a sociologist in France. And basically, he was using these models of vector reduction to translate visually the interviews he did. And for example, this is a beautiful map of interests of people. But what was interesting for me is that Pierre Bourdieu used a lot of visualization in his papers, even getting insights from them. And this vectorial reduction, it's quite a strange process, but the result is that you have a complex matrix reduced in 2 dimensions. And basically, he invented the value of the axis. So for example, this axis is economic capital and cultural capital, which are opposed, and the vertical one is the seniority of the middle class. So basically you have a kind of a map of tastes of that time, saying that according to the theory of Bourdieu, if you belong to the middle class, you probably like paintings, you like go to the museum or listening to classic music. But and this is a long discussion. So I can let's say arrive to the conclusions. So it's a good timing with my recent work. So when I finished working on my affinity map, my PhD, you have to think that I spent 5 years working on the same visualization, which is enriching, but at a certain point even annoying. So I decided to create something simpler, and this is let's say a visual method to represent conferences. So it's the evolution of the one you have seen before, and I use text analysis to run over the abstract of speakers of the conference, and I present people, I present individual in a geographical map in which the peaks are the most relevant areas according to the text analysis. So everything is always based on the zoom. Basically, you want to explore a peak, you want to explore one precise area. This is an example in which we zoom on a part related to historical studies, newspaper, and so on. And basically, when you zoom, keywords and the elevation map disappears to leave the room to people. And in this case, you have a group of people working on newspaper, historical design, and you see at the center Daniele Guido, a very good friend of mine, but basically even my former colleagues of PFL, Matteo Romanello, and my advisor, Frédéric Kaplan. So let's say that in this moment in which everything went online, this is a new method to explore conference. What is a sort of conclusion of my speech? I use this story on Winston Churchill, because Winston Churchill was a person very proud. When he was 80 and was very close to retirement, was gifted by a painting by I think Sutherland. Sutherland was the most famous artist in England at that time. But let's say that Churchill was not happy with his representation, and so there is no trace of this painting today. We have just a small sketch at the National Gallery in London. So I mean, I believe that I know that presenting the identity, the digital identity of a people is very difficult, and you can encounter many problems. But at the same time, this complexity of people makes this work very interesting. And just to talk again of this about the design, I like the idea that we can design visualization. So there is a circle of design in which the visualization, the network visualization is continuing improved, but at the same time, you have even the viewer that read the visualization and modify the behaviors. So you have the design of yourself. And my idea is that these two cycles of design are connected when the viewer look at his representation networks and data visualization through data. And the presentation is almost finished, but I wanted to share with you this work, gorgeous from my point of view, that I did with Philippe Rivière, who is a very good scientist, developer working on D3.js. I mean, is one of the core team. And I had this idea of an ethical representation of people. And what was not good in all this network is placing people on the side of the network. But of course, you know, networks, as well we know, are flat. And so I told myself, why don't we can plot a map on the spherical surface to avoid any borders, to avoid any limit of the visualization, and put people always in a social space in which you have a people to 360 degrees. And so we created this map, but of course you have the problem that you have a dark side of the spherical network. And so we applied geographical projections to the spherical layout. And this is beautiful because this is the Mercator projection, and basically it's continuous. It's the form because it's a simplification, but what you see on the left is connected to what you see on the right, and you have a visualization that is continuous. So people are not put aside. And then you have plenty of this projection, and this is the butterfly, which is just kind of a beautiful, and the process of designing projecting network became a sort of aesthetic. So I can conclude my presentation exactly in time with a good news, and better. We have two good news. I have my thesis that became a book and will publish very soon by Métis Press Geneva. And the book will be available in French in your libraries in June. But the other good news is that the English version of this book will be free online, thanks to the contribution of the Swiss Federal Science Foundation that is paying even my salary in this moment. So I will be happy you can be in touch with this work in June, and I will love to hear your feedback today and in the future. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dario. That was a great presentation, full of insight. Thank you very much. Really, very nice. I really enjoyed that you like the starting point of all your reflection on of network visualizations is the reaction of viewers and how they reacted to your visualization. And I really also loved your schema of the like cycle of visualization when there is like the creator of the visualization that encodes the data, but then it's like decoded by the reader, and sometimes it's completely different. Like both like nourish each other. I think it's like what is like the heart of data visualization and what makes it really interesting. So thank you very much. Really, very nice.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We have a lot of questions. So, so we have also a lot of a lot of mentions in the chat, so I think I can relay the compliments of a lot of people clapping in the chat. And we also have questions, so maybe we can go through them. The first question from Martina Halkia is, hi Dario, where does Muriel Cooper fit in this brief history of network visualizations? Do you know Muriel Cooper? I don't know her.
I know even Martina, but I don't know exactly because it's on the side of my mind. I should need more information from Martina to situate. But I remember she was based in New York, and she was very engaged with everything related to the world of computation, and I think it's somehow related to the current slogan of EPFL of computational thinking. So I remember, I mean, one of the best sides of the profile of this person was the fact that he was open to share the education of code with the very young people that were desperate and not closer to mathematics. And I think that is the most interesting contribution of this person. And I really say that even this kind of data visualization have likewise to be very open to the public. And for example, from a practical point of view, I think that platforms like Observable and even Python notebooks are very good instruments of education. I use even myself in education to teach students.
Okay, cool. Thanks. There is like someone who raised their hand, Teoto Torichi. Maybe I will allow you to talk and ask your questions live.
Hi, everyone. I also realized that there were a lot of written questions before mine, so I don't want to jump in front of everyone's turn. Should I ask the question now, or should I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. First of all, thank you, Dario. That's really inspiring work. Yeah, thank you so much for this great talk. My question is basically my question has to do with how do you handle this trade-off? So networks are really useful to visualize interactions between entities. How do you handle the trade-off between, let's say, intuitive insights that the networks allow and more mathematical reason-like insights? I'm not sure if I'm being clear. So for example, let's take a clear example. In your cartography where you map the conference, basically there's two overlays. The first one is a network, which is based on lexical similarity. And the second one is this isometric line that we can see on geographical maps, for example.
Yes, sir. Yes.
First, the question here, you made a choice to build your network. You made the choice of using TF-IDF.
Sure.
So here your assumption is that the similarity between two speakers is lexical similarity.
Yeah.
A researcher at Google, or I don't know where, could take a machine learning NLP approach to it. So that would be the first choice you made. And then the second, I find this isometric representation on top of it extremely fascinating. What was your intuition there? What rules did you choose? How did you go with this representation?
Sure. Thank you very much for the interesting question. I mean, this visualization is a classical network visualization using TF-IDF with a D-tree layout. So it's really the old style network visualization. But let's say I agree. I'm working with a UMAP in this moment, and results are fascinating. So basically, I'm trying to translate this model with UMAP. To the second question is easy. I mean, I think that as a designer, I like to have inputs from different sources. And when I was at EPFL, I was in the lab of digital humanities with a bigger project, on the Venice archives. And another lab whose goal was to analyze geography in different ways. So I took the most from the intellectual world of geography, and I tried to apply the graphical system, the graphical design system using in topography for networks, and it's pretty meaningful. And even this, it's created on D3.
Yeah, visually, that's absolutely stunning. I was wondering, so if, for example, in your next step, your goal would be to increase the, to find a way to, so right now, visually, there is a relationship between the different speakers. How would you increase the, let's say, the meaning of that relationship between speakers?
I mean, the problem, I mean, a big change for me was this use of the hexagonal pattern, because in that moment, I started to use the backgrounds of data visualization. And if you look at the data visualization in general, you don't have any use of the background. Maybe you can have a few lines. In this way, I tried to insert textual information in this layer, and I think this is just beautiful and needs to be explored. Doing a textual network is something to develop in the future, because you can have better insights and better handles to analyze a specific part of the network visualizations.
And in this case, is there a relationship between the isometric lines and let's say clustering coefficient of the network underneath, or?
Yeah, it's the value. It's the sum of the value of the TF-IDF. So in TF-IDF, you have a relevancy, because basically you can compare a single person with the entire community. And this is a very good way to remove noise, but it's even a good way to see the most relevant keywords for the entire community. And I try to visualize them.
Fantastic. It's beautiful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for the question and the answer. So we have a lot of other questions. So maybe we can look at Teresa Kubaka's question. So it's actually 3 questions. The first one is, could you comment on the technical approach that you use to come up with the relations between the network nodes or other attributes? For example, do you typically rely on algorithms for data mining, or do you also do it by hand? Which tools do you use? So
I use, as I told, D3, a lot of D3. I started with D3, and in this moment, I'm moving to experiment with UMAP. So basically, reduction of the vectors of space. This seems quite complicated, but then you can see very, very nicely. You can read visually the results, and they are just beautiful means to explore, especially large amount of data.
Thank you. Another question is, could you also comment on types of choices that you had to make when having to numerically represent qualitative information, such as estimating how much a given research group is involved in education?
This
like
is
putting
another
numbers on qualitative.
Yeah. I mean, what I tried to represent was the practice of labs. And this comparison is perfect to answer your question. So basically, if you look at each node, you will see that the thickness of the nodes is always the same. What is different is the repartition of these three rings, and basically everything is computed on the average lab, and then compare with a single data. And basically with this indicator, which is not, of course, totally qualitative, but it's not comparable. Basically, you can see the practice of a single lab, and you can see if a lab is more involved in education compared to research. And this is very interesting because we arrived to show this without using any kind of a number.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And so a follow-up question, was there a case where you discovered that the network structure you visualized was significantly different to what was the common knowledge in the community about how it looks like?
Basically, when I did my thesis, we organized interviews. And in general, talk with people is a good measure for see if the agents the arrangement of your network is proper or not. I'm not using mathematical stuff because I think that qualitative interviews, talking with people is still something that very interesting. And what I like of visual methods, even like this one, is that usually I am an attendee of the conference. So I try to create the conference before the opening, and then I'm there and I can talk with people. Of course, I cannot talk with everyone, but people can talk between them about the representation and evaluate the closeness and the neighborhood in which they are placed. But in general, I think that the lexical distance, the frequency of words, is a very good method to situating individuals in the space.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So I see that time is passing, but maybe we have like time for one more question. So I suggest we take a Max Gray's question. Network diagrams tend to be difficult to read. For a visualizing teams project, I also took the no links approach. What other clear ways do you think can be employed to visualize relationships paired with quantitative information, like sizing the nodes based on team size? Mm-hmm. So it's like,
I mean, yeah, what is interesting, because basically my PhD work is about an organizational chart, if you want. And at the beginning was completely messy because we had 1,000 individuals and we had 10,000 of connections. So the idea for me was to introduce a graphic design, a new graphic design to represent organizations. And for example, the idea of to create a network of networks was a way to simplify the map. Basically, in this way, we were able to reduce the number from 1,000 nodes to 70 nodes, which is the number of the labs. And I think, this is more or less, I think, the idea of the entire presentation is that we don't have to be stuck in the old ways to present networks. I think that graphic designers can empower themselves with new ways to represent the data, and networks are very open to create a new version, new ways of representing data. UMAP is a different one. My PhD thesis was different, but I think we have to try to give new shapes to networks, because if there is a lot of work done in terms of algorithms and computation, there is still room to investigate the way in which networks have to be represented.
Thank you very much, Dario. So I see that sadly time is running out. So I'm so sorry if we didn't have time to answer all questions. I noted them down, so maybe like we can continue the conversation on social media or something. Yes, and so to like finish our meetup, I would like to thank you, Dario, very much once again, and all the participants for like being with us tonight, and also very active in the chat and asking questions. That's really great. And I can already also announce our next meetup. So we have to look up. So it will be May 27. At 5 p.m. again, and we will talk about data visualization principles, and it will be a follow-up of presentation that Sekar Ramakrishan gave already last year about data visualization fundamentals. So next meetup, he will continue with intermediate principles. Really looking forward to this too.
Okay, thank you for the invitation. To you, Luke and Benjamin, and thank you to all the attendees. I will try to answer your question in the chat in the next minutes.
Cool. And so as promised, we have a small announcement to make about meetup organization. So I will share my screen. It's yes, so it's first a personal announcement for me because I will move out of Zurich in a few months. So we are looking for maybe someone in Zurich to help us, and it triggered like an idea to Benjamin and I that we can also like rethink the organization of the meetup. So I will let Benjamin take the stage now.
Exactly. So just a few words from my side. As Luc mentions, as he moves away from Zurich, we are missing some representation in Zurich because, as some of you might know, like I'm also not on site these days. So what we're looking for is we're looking for an individual to support us as co-organizer. And what that means is sort of like quarterly research and discussion and planning for the upcoming meetups, and then on-site organization and facilitation. Should we then be able to meet in person again sometime in the future? So for now, we keep the meetups virtual, which has its benefits, but also we miss seeing everybody. So we're looking for a co-organizer who might want to support us and pick up local meetups in the future. But also we are looking for experts who help us steer this community forward in the form of being part of an advisory board. We have our perspective, but we would like to broaden that and include more voices and more opinions in programming, but also community outreach. The work effort there would be sort of like a quarterly review and discussion of the program that we have planned, as well as other initiatives that we do to better reach out and better connect to the community. So if you're interested in any of these roles or both of these roles, or if you have other ideas for what roles you would like to play, please reach out to us, again, using the email address hello@interactivethings.com, or reach out to us on Twitter or Instagram using DataVis ZRH.